In 2025, Suzuki introduced a small, well-equipped SUV called the Fronx. That comes from the words frontier crossover. And while we reckon that might sound a little bit ambitious, there's one feature to the Fronx that you really should know about. Without being too dramatic, your life could depend on it. The Fronx is a pretty tidily styled little SUV. The front end, there's lots of complex curves and lots going on here, but it's quite an attractive thing all up. Down the side, there's a few boulders here, particularly on the back end here, just to make those haunches look a little bit more muscular. And the wheel size, these are only 16-inch wheels here, and you can see there's a big gap between the top of the tyre and the guard there, and we reckon that maybe if they were 17 or 18-inch wheels, it would look a little bit more filled out, a bit more complete, you might say. And around the back end, it certainly looks like the styling around the taillights and across the boot has been inspired by some other more premium brands, and that's not a bad thing at all. It looks pretty neat and tidy. It's really well done. Now let's have a look inside the boot. It is a manual opening boot. That means you've got the old school gas struts, but it's an electronic release, so you don't have to pull a heavy lever or anything like that. It's very light and easy to open, and it opens nice and quick as well, unlike some electrically operated tailgates. Inside the boot, the space is okay. It's middling in terms of small SUVs. It's not the biggest, not the smallest. Pretty practical though. There's a false floor here as well, so if you've got some extra bulky items, you can take the top part out and you get a deeper boot as well. Under that is where the spare tyre would be if they gave you a spare tyre as standard, but they don't. You just get a tyre inflation kit, but you can fit a spare tyre in there if you want to shell out for a little bit more for that. All right, let's have a look inside. Okay, inside the Fronx, it's a really well finished and fairly premium feeling interior for what you pay for this car, $31,000. One of those features that really does make it stand out in this price range is the head-up display. And when you start the car, there's a little screen that pops up here, and it has projected onto it the critical driving information like speed and directions, for example. You can even choose what's displayed on that screen as well. And the rest of the interior, look, it's pretty well laid out and quite ergonomically well thought through. There is no volume knob, so there's just volume buttons on the screen here, and there is a physical switch here on the steering wheel as well, but there's just limited access for passengers to control the volume. Otherwise, there's a wireless charging pad for phones at the front here, which is great to see. There's a USB-A charging port in the front, old school, and not a C, but there is a USB-C in the back along with a USB-A as well. The use of the materials in the car are soft to the touch for the most part. They feel quite good quality. There's a pretty big variation of colours as well, all quite tastefully done, I might add. This maroon colouring on the dash here is also used on the seats. There's a little bit of piano black here just to make sure you get people's fingerprints in the car. The centre console in a car this size, you might expect, is pretty tiny and not much more really than perhaps maybe even just one phone you'd fit in. There's a tiny pocket here as well in the middle, buttons for heated seats, electric park brake, and even for someone my size, I'm 6'2", there's still a little bit of headroom here between the top of my thinning scalp and the roofline. I can get into a pretty comfortable driving position, which you can't say about every small SUV in the market. The screen, look, it's not particularly big, but it suits the size of the car pretty well. Resolution's okay, not incredible. Overall though, the Suzuki Fronx's interior is pretty well done, especially when you take into account the price. In the back of the Fronx, the room's pretty good for a car in this class. You can see the window height is reasonable here. On other small SUVs, you have a much sometimes upswept body line here. So the visibility out of the rear window is not too bad. Headroom is pretty tight for someone my height. The legroom is actually quite good though. So I've still got what looks to be about maybe 8 or 10 centimetres of knee room here. And that's with the driver's seat adjusted for my driving position. So that's encouraging as well. There's room for your feet to go under the seat. There's no electronics box blocking that or stopping you from being able to do that. So that's a handy little bit of extra room. Look, I think if you tried to fit 3 people across the back, that would be pretty tight for shoulder room. But in terms of fitting 3 kids here, say under 12 across the back seat, that'd be just fine. We're on the road in the Suzuki Fronx, just rolling around these quiet suburban streets. It is pretty agreeable. It's a fairly quiet thing. It's pretty easy to handle. It's comfortable and very easy to see out of as well, which you can't say for all small SUVs, particularly those with the raked up styling towards the rear at the side of the car. But perhaps the most important thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about the running costs and the driving of the vehicle is how much fuel the car's using. And while it does say hybrid on the back of this car, it is a mild hybrid system, which means that there's just a little 12-volt lithium-ion battery that is providing power for the electric assistance in this car, which is a lot less in terms of electric grunt compared to a fully hybrid vehicle like a Yaris Cross Hybrid, for example. And it is handy, this little head-up display here, a pretty unusual item in a really affordable car, small SUV like this. It's handy to not have to look so far down in what at the moment is a little bit reflective in that dashboard binnacle here looking at the speedo. And that's not something that you really encounter with this head-up display here. It's projecting the numbers up right in my line of sight, and it's making it a bit easier to look down at a glance and see that critical driver info. Yeah, it is handy to have these ventilation buttons here that controls the HVAC system. Some cars you need to go into the screen to control that sort of stuff, so that's a welcome feature, having some physical buttons that you can just reach down to without even having to look really where they are. You can just feel for them, you can feel that they're working to get the right function that you want in terms of temperature and fan speed. And there are also actual buttons to adjust the venting as well. So when you're defrosting, or if you just want air on your feet or whatever, that is a welcome feature too, which we can't say about every car in this very screen-oriented time that we live in, should I say. The Suzuki Fronx does a number of things pretty well, especially when you consider its price at around $31,000. But our biggest concern was its 1-star ANCAP safety rating. And it got that 1 star because in the lab, the crash test dummies sustained serious injuries, indicating that in a real-world crash, rear seat occupants would be in a lot of trouble, even at a relatively low speed of around 60 kilometres an hour. What also happened in that crash test was one of the rear seatbelt retractors came loose, which is a major concern, obviously. Suzuki have done the right thing though, and issued a safety recall, meaning that customers who have bought the Fronx already can go and have that seatbelt retractor repaired to make sure that it does not happen in a crash. But with that repaired, it's not going to affect the 1-star ANCAP rating. It's still going to have that 1 star. So what do we like about the Suzuki Fronx? Well, the tech inclusions are pretty good. So you get Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and wireless charging for your phone up the front of the car. You also get a head-up display, which is a great inclusion at this price. Plus, the overall value that you get in this car for the money is pretty good. And for what we don't like, well, although it is a hybrid of sorts, it still is quite sluggish to drive, and it's really not all that economical for a car this size. Secondly, there's no spare tyre as standard. You just get a tyre inflation kit. But with its 1-star ANCAP safety rating, and so many rivals that are priced around the same but have got a 5-star ANCAP rating, we'd strongly recommend that you look somewhere else instead.